Mumbai train murder unspools. MIM, Congress communalized killing. Call incident result of anti-Muslim hatred.
तो इस तरह से रेडिकलाइज तो मोदी सरकार इनको कर रही है और इसको पागल कहना सरासर गलत है। ये पूरा एक प्री प्लान प्री मेडिटेटेड तरीके से इसने ये मर्डर किया है।
जवान स्किन कंफर्म्स हिज मेंटल इंस्टेबिलिटी।
जैसे टेंशन में रहता है ना बंदा, इस प्रेशर में रहता है, टेंशन में ही थे वो। वहाँ पे भी इनका ट्रीटमेंट किया था, किलोट वगैरह भी माइंड में निकला है।
A hate crime targeting Muslims. Or killing out of lunacy. Our top focus at 6 p.m. prime.
Good evening. You're watching 6 p.m. Prime here on India Today. I'm Akshita Nandagopal, and this evening we're putting the focus on the fallout of the Mumbai train firing. As more and more revelations come to the fore, there have been horrifying videos also that have emerged that's put the focus on the investigation and the motive of the crime. We're going to be getting you all the details, the facts that are emerging on that story. We're also getting you the latest updates coming in from Haryana as there have been fresh reports of violence. First, as always, the headlines. Haryana on the edge after massive riots in Nuh and Sona. Section 144 imposed in Nuh, Sona and Faridabad till tomorrow. 2 Jawans and 3 civilians killed. Home Minister Amit Shah tables Delhi Ordinance Bill in Lok Sabha amid massive uproar. Congress and TMC call bill unconstitutional. The BJD and YSRCP back the centre.
संविधान ने इस सदन को संपूर्ण सत्ता दी है कि दिल्ली राज्य के लिए किसी भी कानून को लेकर आने की।
Lok Sabha to take up no confidence motion debate from August 8th to 10th. Prime Minister Modi to reply in Parliament on the last day, that's August 10th. Prime Minister Modi and NCP Supremo Sharad Pawar shared dais in Pune. Disquiet in opposition ranks over meet. Congress hits the streets in protest. BJP's Maha Gherao protest in Jaipur against the Ashok Gehlot government. BJP cadre hit the streets over spate of crimes against women in Rajasthan. And Chandrayaan 3 leaves Earth's orbit and heads to the moon. Chandrayaan to enter moon's orbit on August 5th. Let's begin with breaking news that's coming in right now from Haryana. Images from parts of Gurugram now, from Sector 66, that show arson scenes of vandalism that are being reported in several parts of the city as well. These are just kilometers away from the national capital, mind you, that we're seeing these kind of images of shops being vandalized by miscreants. Unfortunately, the reports of violence continues in several parts of Gurugram as well as in Nuh, and that's why Section 144 prohibitory orders, mobile internet has been snapped in several of these districts. These are images that we're getting to you from just a few moments ago from Sector 66 of Gurugram. Look at those images on your screens of the massive arson that's been reported as thick plumes of smoke cover the entire area. For people who live in these parts of Gurugram, it's an absolute nightmare. Many of them aren't stepping out as there have been multiple incidents, multiple reports of violence that's been reported in these parts of Gurugram. Again, let me highlight for you, this is in the national capital region, close to Delhi, that you're seeing these scenes of vandalism, of miscreants going rogue. All of it kicking off from July 31st when you had communal clashes breaking out in parts of Nuh, in parts of Sona and Faridabad, and that's followed up by, in fact, the fire spreading to several other parts of Haryana, including Gurugram. Schools, colleges have been shut. Shops that dared to open amid the violence, amid the tension, are being vandalized and targeted in this manner. Let's take this across now to Milind Sharma. She's joining us live from Gurugram, from the spot where we've seen some of that violence breaking out. Milind, good evening. Can you tell us what's the situation currently on ground?
Well, Akshita, I'd like to show you that arson and fires were just burning in this particular area in Gurugram's Sector 66. This is also an area called Badshahpur, which is not very far from the Fortune 500 offices of the Millennium City. And of course, whatever instances one is getting in these sporadic areas where mob violence is being seen, the police has not been found in action. But let me show you whatever remains of this particular shop that has been burned. There was a makeshift hotel over here owned by one particular community that has now been charred to the ground, and everything has been ransacked. What we've told is that the people who belong to this community had actually fled from the scene last night itself, and whatever remained here was abandoned. But a mob of a lot of people entered today, just an hour back, and burnt everything to the ground, and nothing has been left behind. There is a this, can you see this refrigerator over here, a stove oven over there? So this was something called as a dhaba that was at this part, and on the other side there was also a kirana shop, and nothing of that remains. Just to show you in what location I am right now, all around me, if Ankit will just pan the camera and show you, this is Ansal Essentia area. These are big high-rise residential societies just across the road. If Ankit will pan towards his right, these are posh societies and houses, Bestech, Parkview, Spa Next, big societies where people stay. And this is the kind of mob violence that is being witnessed right in the heart of residential areas of Gurugram, which is absolutely scary. A lot of office goers, a lot of MNC goers have also been either asked to work from home. So it's not just the schools and colleges, but even office goers are now being told
it's not
to
just
stay
the rural
back
pockets.
and work from.
Going by your report, Milind, it's not just the rural pockets. You see, amid all of those high rises, thick plumes of smoke coming out. There are incidents of arson, of vandalism, of shops which dared to be open amid the tension being targeted immediately by miscreants. I want to bring in Shreya Chatterjee, who's joining us live from Nuh, which was the epicenter of the violence, of the clashes yesterday. What's the situation where you are, Shreya? Have things calmed down, or are they still on edge?
Well, fortunately, Akshita, there hasn't been any fresh reports of violence from Nuh and the outskirts of it. There is area domination activity that's been carried on by the police on the ground. We have reports of 11 FIRs that's been registered, and right now the police is at the first trying to ensure that all the remains of the riot is right now removed from the area. However, when we talk about the tension, it is still there. That is the reason curfew and Section 144 remains imposed. People are not happy with the way the Haryana police dealt the entire incident. Remember, there was the possibility of communal tension that was there on the social media bickering that was going on between Monu Manesar and the people from Mewat via YouTube videos and subsequently other media. The intel inputs that completely went ignored by the Haryana police. That's exactly why we saw the kind of violence that actually erupted in Nuh, which actually poured over then to Sona and now to Gurugram. So a lot of answering on the part of Haryana police. Why did they ignore the intel reports? We'll have to wait and watch what their answer is. But people on both sides are not happy with the way Haryana police dealt the entire situation.
And, rightfully questions will be asked of how the administration has dealt with this, particularly because you've had the Haryana government. And Milind, if I can bring you in on this as well, the Haryana government has said very clearly that this, in some circumstance, in some cases, was pre-planned violence. Then there will be questions on why they weren't better prepared for this kind of a scenario, for this kind of clashes.
Well, absolutely, Akshita. The fact that whatever has been happening in Mewat and Nuh has actually had a spillover in Gurugram, and that too, let me tell you, in the selected pockets and selected areas only, because largely there are flash mobs that are congregating at one point and leading to this particular image that you see in front of you of charred shops, charred areas. Let me tell you that at least in Gurugram, the fortunate part is that the violence has not yet penetrated inside the homes and the establishments and areas where people stay for now. But what will happen after this, we are unaware of that. Of course, the DC Gurugram, the police administration has been trying to mediate between the two communities that are going back and forth with this kind of violence. But for how long will the citizens have to face this kind of uncertainty is the real question. And meanwhile, when you look at these images and juxtaposing it, Ankit will show you, there are high-rise buildings. This is a scathing picture and the reality of Gurugram, really, where you have high rises, people spending money, buying homes here in posh localities. And just next to that, if there is no deployment from the police, there's no security that the administration can provide, paints a very scary picture for a city that holds a lot of MNCs, multinational companies and expatriate crowds, in this particular area as well. And that's why perhaps the Gurugram police is on a back foot since yesterday and today as well. What the police has said that they have to be on guard and deployments will be done all around Gurugram, and Section 144 will continue to be imposed in sensitive areas.
Okay, so prohibitory orders remain in place, as Milind is reporting for us. It started off as clashes that broke out during a VHP rally that was going through some of the streets of Nuh of Mewat. There was stone pelting reported, after which violence broke out, as a result of which mosques were vandalized and there were casualties, unfortunately, on both sides. We're going to continue tracking the latest on this. Milind and Shreya, thank you very much for joining us with your respective ground reports. Let's take you through some of the reactions coming in. Opposition leaders have questioned the government on why they weren't better prepared, why adequate security wasn't provided on ground. Let's get you some reactions.
ये बड़ा दुर्भाग्यपूर्ण है। मेरा लोगों से यही अपील है कि शांति कायम रखें और कानून व्यवस्था कायम करने के लिए मदद करें और आपस में भाईचारा बनाएं।
गृह मंत्री कह रहे हैं कि हमने पर्याप्त जो है बल तैनात किया है।
वही मैं कह रहा हूँ, अब पर्याप्त ने भेजा होगा, लेकिन पहले जितनी होनी चाहिए थी उतनी नहीं है जो मैंने सुना है।
हरियाणा को पहले भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार ने जातीय हिंसा में धकेला था और वो आग वर्षों तक धधकती रही। अब जैसे ही चुनाव नजदीक आ रहा है, हरियाणा को धार्मिक हिंसा के अंदर धकेला जा रहा है। बताइए क्या कारण है कि हमारे हरियाणा में, शांति प्रिय हरियाणा में 75 वर्षों में देश की आजादी के बाद कभी धार्मिक दंगे नहीं हुए। पहली बार धार्मिक दंगे हुए, वो भी भारतीय जनता पार्टी की सरकार की नाक के नीचे। कहां है मुख्यमंत्री?
We promise to keep an eye on all the developments coming in from Haryana and get you those ground reports here on India Today. Let's switch focus to the story that came in yesterday, the horrifying incident of an RPF constable opening fire inside a moving train in Mumbai. He killed 4 people, including his senior, including ASI Meena and 3 others who were Muslims. And that's what's triggered now a big political fight, as AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi has called this a terror attack. He said that Muslims have been targeted. This even as officials have said that the accused Chetan was mentally unstable. So obviously it's divided society, it's divided social media as to what was the motive, what triggered this crime. Let's first get you all the details in our report.
Four people dead at the hands of a man who was supposed to protect and serve. The shocking firing inside a Mumbai train on Monday morning has sent shockwaves across the country. The accused RPF constable who killed his senior and then 3 civilians is in custody. While on one hand, officials have claimed that the accused constable was mentally unstable, politics has now broken out over the religious identity of the victims. All 3 civilians who died were Muslims. Shocking videos have now emerged of the crime of killer Chetan ranting anti-Muslim comments, which we have muted here on India Today due to his incendiary nature. Sharing these videos, AIMIM chief Asaduddin Owaisi has reacted sharply, calling the incident a targeted attack on Muslims.
मैं शुरू से ही कह रहा हूं कि ये लोग रेडिकलाइज क्यों हो रहे हैं, ये लोग इतने एक्सट्रीमिज्म पे क्यों जा रहे हैं, ये लोग हथियार उठाकर गोली क्यों चला रहे हैं, इनको लोकतंत्र पे भरोसा क्यों खत्म हो गया है, और इस तरह से रेडिकलाइज तो मोदी सरकार इनको कर रही है.
So was it a targeted communal strike or a man mentally unstable going on a rampage? India Today spoke to Chetan's family, who confirmed he was undergoing treatment for the last 1 year but never acted out at home.
तबीयत काफी टाइम से खराब थी तबीयत. हाँ, उनके माइंड में क्लॉट वगैरह भी है. अच्छा, माइंड में भी क्लॉट निकला था. तो इलाज चल रहा था कहीं? जी. कहाँ चल रहा? और यहाँ तो ये है कि घर पे चलो फैमिली है तो छुट्टी मिलती तो दे देती थी, कंटिन्यू दवाई चलती थी. भाई ऑफिस में जाने के बाद में कंटिन्यू दवाई नहीं चल पाती है, ताकि आराम मिले, उनको रिलीफ मिले, वो चीजें नहीं थी.
India Today has also accessed the statement of a witness constable who was on board the train and was with the accused killer. According to him, Chetan resorted to this shooting spree because he wasn't allowed to leave early by ASI Tikaram Meena, who was also killed. Targeted communal attack or an unhinged man on the loose? The ongoing investigation will hopefully throw more light on the exact motive. Bureau Report, India Today.
All right, so we are asking some questions on this broadcast with regards to this incident, and that will hopefully give us answers post the investigation. Was the accused mentally stable, or was this an anti-Muslim rampage? Was the attempt to target all these Muslim civilians as he did in that train? The second question that hopefully we'll get answers to post the investigation: why did the accused target specific people, target only members of the Muslim community? He reportedly went from one coach to another looking for them, and then went ahead and shot at them and killed them. Let's get to also the next question now on our broadcast. With regards to if this was a communal crime, why did accused Chetan then go ahead and target his senior? Because remember, the first killing was that of ASI Meena. So that is, of course, something that we will hopefully have clarity on. And finally, also questions loom on whether Chetan was mentally unstable or not. We'll hopefully get answers to that as the investigation progresses. I want to bring in now Mustafa Sheikh, who's joining us live on this broadcast. Mustafa, there's a lot of back and forth right now on exactly what transpired, the exact sequence of events. What are officials saying right now on this angle that several people are questioning about the civilians who were targeted, about the Muslims who were targeted, and the horrifying videos that are doing the rounds?
Well, as of now, what the police are saying is that there are some versions coming out which is of those policemen who were with Tikaram and Chetan, and they are saying that it was work pressure, he was not allowed to go and hence he targeted. But at the same time, there is no concrete statement which has been recorded of train passengers who are present at that point, and that is something which is surprising, is that the videos which have come out in which a lot of passengers are seen, but these passengers have actually not come out and recorded their statements with the policemen, and those statements are also key, because remember, it is not that the firing has taken place only in one coach, it's in the 3 different coach of the same train that this firing has taken place, whether these people were running and why these 3 people specifically were targeted. And obviously there is what we are saying that is a religious angle, but at this point the clarity which the police has is about that prima facie it looks like that he was troubled with some work and hence he has taken this step, but at the same time there is no word as to why these 3 civilians were targeted. The police are also saying is that even if we get a version from the eyewitness, we will have to verify if this version is true or not, and that is something which will take some time. Back to you, Akshita.
Right, Mustafa, thank you very much for getting us all of those details. I just want to read out for you now parts of a statement that's come in from a witness. This is mentioned in the FIR. There was another constable called Acharya who was in that train. Here's what he said happened. He confirmed that he was in the train along with Chetan, boarded along with 3 other cops, including Chetan and the ASI. Now, he says that Chetan claimed he was unwell. I checked whether he had fever, but he didn't seem to have a high temperature. He seemed just fine, but he kept constantly claiming he was unwell. Let's get you the next plate as well. Now, after that, according to, in fact, this witness cop, ASI Meena and Chetan repeatedly asked him to stop the train, that he'd get off at the Valsad railway station, which is about 2 to 3 hours before the final stop. Now, this was a request that was constantly rejected by ASI Meena. Chetan, in fact, had convinced the ASI to also reach out to the command center, to the control center, but they too said, rest in the train, you'll reach in another 2 to 3 hours. Now, at this point, the ASI, who was extremely understanding, reportedly asked the constable to get something, to get a cold drink for Chetan. He refused, however, to drink. Chetan was then asked to rest, to sleep till they reach the final stop. And that's why he had directed the witness here, the constable Acharya, to take away his rifle. And Acharya says he was seated right adjacent to Chetan when Chetan refused to sleep for about 15 minutes, tossed back and forth, and then started arguing with him to take back his rifle. So much so that, according to Constable Acharya, the witness here, he was being strangled and threatened by Chetan. So he gave up the rifle. Now, that's when he realized that Chetan, the accused here, had taken the wrong rifle, had taken his rifle instead of his own. So he stopped him, told him, you've taken the wrong rifle. So Chetan gave it back, but then started arguing once again with ASI Meena, who was also present there. Now, it was at that point that this witness says he moved away. Only much later to hear, and there's about 25 minutes later, reportedly, he heard that that the ASI was shot dead. His colleague says that he had reached out to him and told him that your ASI has in fact been killed. So he went back to the coach to see 3 to 4 passengers, he says, running towards me in a panic. He says, I saw Chetan. He looked extremely angry and started moving towards me. So I ran away and went into another coach. And then he says that I saw Chetan standing outside, in fact, on the platform once the train had stopped. He says a passenger had clearly pulled the chain and Chetan had gotten off, but he was still aiming at the train, trying to fire at the train. So this constable says, at that point I was scared and I decided to go ahead and hide in the washroom of the train. Now, once he's hiding there, he says that Chetan, even at that point, was aiming for the train, ready to shoot again, but was clearly making a bid to run away. The train, according to this constable Acharya, then started moving once again. And then at the next stop, when he stepped out, he saw that Chetan was still, in fact, away, wasn't in the train. And the cops, officials had managed to get in and started tending to the accused, to those who were casualties of this horrific crime. So that is the sequence of events as mentioned by the witness. Now, there's a lot of talk about whether this has been communalized, particularly over what Asaduddin Owaisi said. We broke it here on India Today last evening. A lot of you have piled onto me on social media questioning, why have we said communalizing? Well, if you look at the definition, it's about dragging religion, taking in religion into a case, which is exactly what had happened yesterday when the reactions came in. So just a Google search will tell you what the meaning of that is. But I want to leave you with some food for thought, essentially. What if the tables were turned? What if the religions were different? What if the case itself was completely different from what it is right now? Would all of those who are outraging today, saying that you must call this out to be a terror attack, to be an anti-Muslim attack, would they have still outraged the same way, or would they have said that there's an attempt to trivialize mental health, that there's an attempt to change the narrative and not talk about mental health if the tables were turned?
Delhi Ordinance Dangal reaches Parliament. Home Minister Amit Shah tables bill in Lok Sabha.
हमारे संविधान ने इस सदन को संपूर्ण सत्ता दी है कि दिल्ली राज्य के लिए किसी भी कानून को लेकर आने की.
Opposition rallies behind AAP, opposes bill.
First, the bill violates the defining feature of a federal democracy, the division of power. It undermines the Delhi Legislative Assembly and the Delhi government.
Bill to sail through in Lok Sabha smoothly.
दिल्ली बिल वापस लो, वापस लो, वापस सदन में आके जवाब दो, जवाब दो, जवाब दो, वरना बत्ती छोड़ना होगा, छोड़ना होगा.
But will it face impediment in Rajya Sabha? Our top focus at 6:30 p.m.
This bill was officially tabled in the Lok Sabha by Home Minister Amit Shah, and you had several statements coming in from political parties that gave you a sense of where they really stand. We'll get to the numbers in just a bit, but let me first highlight for you some of the reactions, some of the statements that were made in Parliament.
How can they do like this, sir? जो मुद्दे संसद के नियमों के अनुसार उठाए गए, मैं इसकी स्पष्टता इस महान सदन के सामने करना चाहता हूं। माननीय अध्यक्ष, 239 क और क के अंतर्गत ख, इसमें स्पष्ट उल्लेख है संविधान में कि उपखंड क की किसी बात से संघ राज्य क्षेत्र या किसी भी भाग के लिए किसी भी विषय के संबंध में इस संविधान के अधीन विधि बनाने की संसद की शक्ति का अल्पीकरण नहीं हो सकता। इसका मतलब है हमारे संविधान ने इस सदन को संपूर्ण सत्ता दी है कि दिल्ली राज्य के लिए किसी भी कानून को लेकर आने की। दूसरा मुद्दा उठाया गया सुप्रीम कोर्ट के जजमेंट का, जो हमारे माननीय सांसद बीजेडी के बताया सर्वोच्च न्यायालय के पैरा 6 जजमेंट के पैरा 6, 95 और पैरा 164 एफ, इसके संबंध में सर्वोच्च न्यायालय ने स्पष्ट किया है कि संसद दिल्ली संघ राज्य क्षेत्र के लिए कोई भी कानून बना सकता है। अतः ये सारे जो ऑब्जेक्शन लिए गए हैं वो राजनीतिक है, इसका कोई संवैधानिक आधार नहीं है। संसद के नियमों के आधार पर भी इसका कोई आधार नहीं बनता है, इसीलिए इस बिल को संसद के सामने पेश करने की अनुमति दी जाए।
अनुच्छेद 239 के स्पष्ट रूप से दिल्ली विधानसभा को राज्य और समवर्ती सूची में सूचीबद्ध मामले पर कानून बनाने की शक्ति प्रदान करता है। इससे संविधान की अपेक्षा करने और उच्चतम न्यायालय की अनदेखी करने में केंद्रीय सरकार की दृष्टिकोण को बारे में गंभीर प्रश्न उठता है। इस विधेयक का उद्देश्य उच्चतम न्यायालय की फैसले से ज्यादा स्थापित दिल्ली सरकार के अधिकार और उसकी स्वतंत्रता को कम करने का है।
The bill violates the defining feature of a federal democracy, the division of power. It undermines the Delhi Legislative Assembly and the Delhi government, and by trying to supersede the Supreme Court's decision on the matter, the union government appears to undermine the constitutional principle of federalism. Number 2, sir, just 4 quick points. Sankshipt mein bol raha hu. Number 2, the bill infringes the principle of representative democracy, which is a basic feature of the Constitution. The legislators are accountable to their electorate. The electorate must have a say in who governs them. If the Delhi government is not able to control and hold to account the officers posted in its service, sir, the fact is that it's their responsibility. The legislature cannot be fulfilled.
ये चेस और लूडो का खेल हो रहा है सर, उधर से चेस खेला जा रहा है, लूडो खेला जा रहा है। सर, मैं इसलिए अपोज कर रहा हूं कि ये आर्टिकल 123 का वायलेशन है। एक सिंपल बिल से आप संविधान को अमेंड नहीं कर सकते। तीसरा, ये थियोरी ऑफ सेपरेशन ऑफ पावर्स का वायलेशन है। चौथा ये है कि सर, सुप्रीम कोर्ट का 4 जुलाई 2018 का 5 जजेस का जजमेंट है, तो इसीलिए मैं ये कहता हूं कि ये इस हाउस को लेजिस्लेटिव कॉम्पिटेंस नहीं है, इसलिए मैं इस बिल की मुखालिफत कर रहा हूं। अब जबकि हमारे लीडर ऑपोजिशन ने अलाउ कर दिया बगैर प्रधानमंत्री के, मेरी आपसे गुजारिश है सर, मैं डिवीजन पूछूंगा, अब डिवीजन कराइए।
There are some very erudite members of parliament here who know the law well. I'm surprised that when legislative competence is being discussed under Article 70, under Rule 72 proviso, that there is no advertence at all to the actual Supreme Court judgment or the order which the Supreme Court has passed, a speaking order of 7 pages the Supreme Court has passed in the writ petition filed by the State of Delhi against Union of India. Government has brought out a law now pursuant to a Supreme Court empowering it. So how can you challenge legislative competence?
So we've got you some of the reactions that came in from Parliament, each party making their stand clear on the Delhi Services Bill. Most of the opposition parties, as expected, backing the Aam Aadmi Party. But how does this look numbers-wise? Look at the Lok Sabha numbers right now. Of the total 535 seats, it's easy, smooth sailing for the government with 351 in their favour. Against the government, this is the India Alliance and several others, is 147. There are, however, 32 who are undecided and, of course, 5 vacant seats. But it's a comfortable number game, really, in the Lok Sabha for the BJP, for the government. Rajya Sabha is where it gets interesting. Now, all along, it was assumed that the government doesn't have the numbers in Rajya Sabha. But what's worked in their favour is the very crucial support of the YSRCP and the BJD. As you see there, it's 9 each, so 18 that's come onto their side, and that's ensured that they crossed that halfway mark of 120. So the government side now in the Rajya Sabha is 130 and the opposition at 105, despite all of their attempts to stitch together a united front, despite all of the attempts of the Aam Aadmi Party to appeal to all political parties. The YSRCP and the BJD have clearly gone to the government side, and that's what swung things in favour of the government right now. And I want to bring in on this broadcast Mr. Pinaki Mishra, BJD MP, who also spoke in Parliament today on the Delhi Services Bill. Mr. Mishra, good evening. Thank you for joining us here at 6 p.m. Prime. A few moments ago, sir, we played a few highlights, really, of what several parliamentarians said, including you. Now, very often when you heard what the opposition said, they kept questioning the Delhi Services Bill and questioning Parliament's legislative competence. You had a reply to that. Can you just repeat that for our viewers now?
You know, I think the opposition, when they spoke about legislative competence, it was more political rather than legal, because paragraph 95 of the May judgment, the Constitution Bench judgment of the Honourable Supreme Court, clearly says that, however, if Parliament enacts a law granting executive power on any subject which is within the domain of NCTD, the executive power of the Lieutenant Governor shall be modified to the extent as provided in that law. So clearly, the court therefore felt that Parliament had the legislative competence to enact a law at some point in time in future, and that would then be the modified law. So therefore, today it was only for introduction. At the introduction stage, Rule 72 proviso of the Lok Sabha Conduct of Business Rules says that you can object to the introduction of a bill on grounds of legislative competence, that Parliament does not have the competence to pass legislation. Now, that is clearly belied by the Honourable Supreme Court's observation in para 95, number one. Number two, the government of the National Capital Region of Delhi filed a writ petition, as you know, in the Supreme Court, which is written 678 of 2023. On the 20th of July 2023, a 3-judge bench headed by the Honourable Chief Justice wrote a 7-page order actually admitting that and sending it to the Constitution Bench for further hearing. And there a stay was prayed for of the ordinance. The stay was rejected, expressly rejected. So now once the stay on that is rejected, to say that Parliament cannot legislate, now that's a political argument. So my point was, you can't object to the introduction. How you vote later is really, as per your the dictate of your political party and its particular position that you've taken in the country's polity. But the Biju Janata Dal, of course, has taken the stand that we would support this for a number of reasons. Number one being that the Supreme Court has not granted a stay. The matter is pending before a Constitution Bench. Let the Constitution Bench decide finally. There's no problem on that. But in the interim, looking to the fact that Delhi there's a peculiar situation in Delhi, being the national capital with law and order being paramount importance, police being in the hands of the central government. Therefore, if the government has brought out something which the Supreme Court itself said can be done by the government and would not be, outside the purview of its legislative competence, then you can't today object to its introduction. Then, of course, it's up to the government. If they have the numbers in Parliament, they will pass it.
Sure. Mr. Mishra, I must say that especially to the first part of your statement, a comment came to my mind on social media which said, thank God we have lawyers in Parliament as well. But focusing on your argument, sir, that stemmed from political reasons as well, where you said that, look, we've kept in mind what's happened in the Supreme Court, and then we've gone ahead and taken this stand. Politically speaking, there will be a lot of focus on the BJD stand, whether this translates to support for the BJP, why we've chosen to back the BJP. I'm sure you recognize what really this means for the Delhi government and how it really cripples them.
Look, as far as the politics of the BJP government at the center and the BJD government in the state is concerned, we fight them tooth and nail on the ground level. But, my chief minister is someone, Mr. Naveen Patnaik is someone who's now in his 5th term, going into a 6th term, hopefully in 2024. He's not someone who's needlessly adversarial with the center. He's never been. Even when the UPA was in government, on a number of issues, we supported the UPA. But on a number of issues, we opposed the UPA. Similarly, with the NDA government, for instance, on the farm laws, we opposed the government. We felt that it was not in the interest of farmers. So it's not as if we've given them a blank check. Okay. Very often we oppose, but it's all issue-based. And I believe that, particularly on this, as well as on the no confidence, for instance, where, again, we have taken an in-principle stand, that today a no confidence is not only just unwarranted, but is actually fairly, how shall I put it? It's useless because, number one, the country should speak in one voice. That's what Naveen Patnaik ji feels. On day one, when Mr. Amit Shah ji held that meeting, all-party meeting, my mandate was that speak in one voice. The whole, all the parties should speak in one voice and let the people of Manipur feel that the whole country is behind them. This is not a fractious issue. This is not a partisan issue. Sure. Everybody is behind them, and we are all keen that resolution is swiftly found. So towards that end, therefore we are with the government on that. Now,
Mr.
today to bring a confidence only to drag the Prime Minister to Parliament, I believe the opposition has laid a trap in which they will fall themselves. Because the Prime Minister will come on the 10th, he'll make a fiery 2-hour speech, blow the opposition case to smithereens and walk away triumphantly. So it just doesn't make sense. And why would you block Parliament? We could have done legislative business, because blocking Parliament means you handing the government the initiative on a platter. The government is always happy to avoid Parliament. Let's face it. No government wants to face Parliament. So if they can pass legislation in the din, if they can pass laws in the din without any debate, without discussion, ministers are happiest. So you're really falling into a government trap by disrupting Parliament, because government business will go on. They will rule either the ordinance rule or the legislative route. They are not going to stop. The country won't stop. Governance won't stop. It's just Parliament stops, and that is bad for democracy. It's bad for members of Parliament who have struggled to reach the Lok Sabha. It's not easy. I mean, I fought 6 elections. I'm in my 4th term in the Lok Sabha. I know what it takes to fight the Lok Sabha election, win and come. So, and people want their issues agitated.
Very true.
So, whoever is taking this decision to block Parliament, I believe, is not doing themselves a service. You're cutting your nose to spite your face.
You made a very, very interesting point there on what's happening in Parliament for the last 9 days. My final question to you, however, Mr. Pinaki Mishra, is what you've said is very familiar to the script that most BJP leaders are also talking about right now, or what's happening in Parliament, as well as these bills that are currently being debated in different forms in Parliament. Is the BJD on its course to joining the NDA in 2024, sir, or is it too early?
No question of joining the NDA. That's not even an issue. Whoever comes to power at the centre, Naveen Patnaik ji believes that there has to be cooperation and partnership with the centre. In a true federal polity, there has got to be cooperative federalism. which means that you can't needlessly keep fighting on every petty small issue. And just be adversarial all the time with the central government. That's pointless. Yes, on issues we may have a difference of opinion. We will articulate it firmly. We will differ. We will vote, in the opposite direction. That's all possible, and that has happened in the past. But we will not needlessly on issues where bipartisanship is called for, or where one voice is called for. We are not going to become fractious and needlessly fight with the government merely to say that we are not with the government. That doesn't make sense to Mr. Patnaik. He believes Odisha's interest is number one. Today, for instance, the offshore mineral bill has come. Now we commend that bill because it's in our interest. It'll give us massive royalties as it will give royalty to Karnataka, to Andhra, to Goa, to many other coastal states. So therefore, when government brings this kind of beneficial legislation to Parliament, then it's our job to support it.
It's a very interesting stand, Mr. Pinaki Mishra, and I think the comment that you've made on Delhi Services Bill is something that I'm sure the opposition is also taking note of. Thank you very much, Mr. Mishra, for joining us here on India Today with your perspective and making clear for us exactly what the BJD stand is. You've heard it here on India Today. The BJD is saying very clearly that as far as the Delhi Services Bill is concerned, the no trust motion is concerned, they will back the government. And that is essentially a game changer numbers-wise for the government in the Rajya Sabha. We'll continue, of course, tracking the story and much more, but that's all I have time for in this edition of 6 p.m. Prime. Thanks very much for tuning in.